History's most dangerous katana. 7 spines severed by Nanatsudo Otoshi Kanefusa, 1681. Edo, Japan. 7 corpses lie stacked on a mound of packed sand. They are already dead, executed by beheading, then bound together for a different purpose. A man named Nakanishi Jurōbei Yukimitsu prepares to test a blade forged by Kanefusa of Seki. Later accounts describe him climbing a ladder. 7 bodies stacked together would exceed the height a man can reach from the ground. Therefore, some speculate an elevated platform or jumping technique was necessary. However, no contemporary source records the exact method. What is recorded is the result: the inscription carved into the tang in gold, Nanatsudo-Otoshi. 7 torso cut, clear evidence of a 7-body cutting test, the highest number found in surviving Tameshigiri inscriptions. Whether accomplished in a single continuous stroke or through some other method, the documentation does not say. It only records the outcome. And in the shogunate system, the outcome was what mattered. Certified deadly. Plenty of swords could cut. Few had witnesses. Fewer still had paperwork. What separated the Kanefusa was not its deadly sharp edge. It was its documentation. The shogunate had built a system for turning a brutal test of cutting ability into a quality assurance process. Certification here meant documentation, not scientific verification, but in a world without laboratory testing, witness documentation was the closest thing a buyer could obtain to a performance guarantee. Swords with results inscribed on their tang were sought out for their recorded reliability. That inscribed evidence commands markets even to this day. The Tameshigiri system. Tameshigiri did not typically use swords against living prisoners. The cutting test was not an execution. That came first, by beheading. Afterward, the headless corpse became the raw material for a different purpose. Cutting tests were not wanton desecration. The use of the body after execution was part of the sentence itself. For serious crimes, judgment could include public display, confiscation of property, and provision of the corpse for blade testing, dishonor that continued after death. One criminal, upon learning his fate, supposedly joked that he should have swallowed a stone or two to ruin the test blade after his execution. The shogunate appointed official testers called Otameshiyaku. They were expert swordsmen, not executioners. The most famous family line of these, the Yamada Asaemon, served for 8 generations. One predecessor, Yamano is said to have tested blades on over 6,000 bodies across 40 years, an impressive figure, though many scholars today consider the claim to have been exaggerated. The system required ceremony, a platform of packed earth and sand, bamboo stakes to hold the corpse in position, officials in attendance. Afterward, a report was written on the blade's condition. If it passed, the result was inscribed on the tang: date, tester's name, cut location, number of bodies severed. A samurai's sword was his life insurance. If it failed in combat, bent, chipped, failed to cut cleanly, he died. Tameshigiri offered the closest available proof that a blade would perform when it mattered. The result: 7 bodies severed is an astonishing number. Most blades that received inscriptions recorded just 2. 3 to 4 was considered exceptional performance. 7 remains the highest number found among surviving records. The officials examined the blade. They recorded the result. The sword's owner paid handsomely for the privilege of documentation. By some accounts, a test by a highly respected Otameshiyaku could rival the cost of the sword itself. Exaggeration or reality? Sword scholar Marcus Sesko warns that many Tameshigiri inscriptions have likely been faked or exaggerated. This is not surprising. A recorded 7-body cut would have made the blade bearing that inscription extraordinarily valuable. A test conducted by an experienced party with a strong reputation was expensive, and so the tester's reputation depended on impressive results. Dishonest dealers are thought to have added false inscriptions to move inventory. Everyone in the supply chain benefited from higher numbers. One often cited example is a kotetsu wakizashi that bears a tameshi attributed to a tester named Yamano Kantaro Nagatsugu. However, that name does not appear in any historical records. The blade is the only one to bear his signature. Modern scholars suspect the inscription was entirely fabricated, possibly by a dealer seeking to inflate the sword's market value. So when we read the results of a seven-body test, questions arise. Were 7 bodies actually severed in a single blow? Or did someone in 1681 realize that the higher number sounded more impressive than a more modest 5? The system's strange logic. Despite possible forgeries, the Tameshigiri system was not lawless. Bodies of Buddhist priests were generally avoided. So were those of the burakumin, the lowest caste. Women were often considered unsuitable, as was anyone showing signs of disease, not out of mercy, out of belief. Cutting the wrong body was thought to pollute the sword spiritually. The blade might absorb something unclean. A weapon meant to protect its owner could become cursed. The system cared deeply about contamination and took pains to avoid it. It cared less about the violence itself. Consequences of the rating system. By 1797, the 5th-generation Yamada Asaemon published the Kaiho Kenjaku, a ranking of sword makers based on cutting performance. 228 smiths were classified into 4 grades: supreme, excellent, very good, and good, each determined by how their blades had performed on human bodies. This became a consumer guide. When buyers sought a new sword, they could consult the list. A Kanefusa smith of the Seki tradition was ranked among the supreme grade, the smith whose blade recorded the 7-body cut. The Kanefusa reputation, built on documented results, made such work more valuable for generations. The collector's gaze. A blade bearing this inscription survives. The gold inlay remains legible, but the names of the 7 men whose bodies it passed through were never recorded. Their punishment was to be subjected to the system. The test cutting required them only as raw material, as proof of function, quality assurance. When we look at a blade with tameshi, we are not seeing a mere weapon. We are seeing a documented process, evidence of a government-sanctioned system built to record how well-sharpened steel travels through human flesh. Most blades that passed the test cut through 2 bodies. 3 was considered exceptional. 7 is the record, and so it remains. A record we hope will never be broken. Today, Tameshi blades command premium prices. Their inscription is a selling point. Collectors call it provenance, a grisly act, recorded in steel, inlaid with gold. At Dream of Japan, we forge blades that need no certification, steel that proves itself every time you draw it. This has been history's most dangerous katana, Episode 7. Next time, a sword named for killing a monster, Yamambagiri Kunihiro. We'll explore how the fate and fortune of each of its owners became entwined with this legendary blade. Like, subscribe, and join the newsletter for more real samurai history and epic sword content.